Tracy Mommy Reads. I am back again with another video. Y'all got y'all merch? Oh, nothing in here. Don't forget to look in there's a link in the profile here on YouTube for my merch for Back to the Book. Got t-shirts and mugs and book bags and all kind of cool stuff if you want to, find a way to support the channel. Thank you for that. And also go ahead and subscribe. We'll put that out there before we get started if you haven't subscribed already. But thank you to everyone who has been supporting the channel by buying the merch, by subscribing, by sharing my videos. I truly, truly appreciate it. Like, I mean, obviously y'all know by watching my videos how obsessed I am with reading. But yeah, it is just one of those things. It is such a passion. It is such a lifesaver, to be able to escape into a good book. I think that reading, it does so much other than just entertaining you and providing an escape. All the E's, it provides empathy, education. So there's just so many good things about reading that, I don't know that any other piece of media provides, to be honest. I think that we're entertained and a lot of things by, like movies and music or whatever, but books, that's just a whole nother level. So shout out to all the book lovers out there. We are a rare breed. We're a special breed. Keep reading, keep, being curious, because we're living in a time where, I think that there are people who don't want us to read. They don't want us to open books. They don't want us to expand our minds. They don't want us to critically think about things. So reading is actually an act of rebellion. So keep it going. Anyway, off my soapbox I go. Today, I'm so excited to be talking about this book. I'm going to be talking about the book, The Half of It by Juliette Fay. The half of it. And my Texas accent is like I'm saying half, just H-A-F, but it's the half of, let me stop trying to pronounce that word. Does anybody say that? Half? Okay, anyway, like, not whole, but half. Okay, that y'all know what I'm trying to say. This book was such a pleasant surprise. I think that I got this through like the Prime reads. I think I told y'all about that before, where like every month Prime will, if you're a Prime member, you get a free book. It's free as far as you don't have to pay for it, and it stays in your library on your Kindle. And I saw the blurb, and that's what made me want to read this one. And I was talking about this. I did a book event for my latest release, The Candidate's Betrayal, which you can learn more about on my website at tracymommy.com. But we had like a author meet and greet or author talk, and I mentioned this about, for me, being a woman in my 50s, like writing about characters my age, because of the life experiences. A lot of times it's not, I don't know, I feel like now there are more authors writing mature characters, because I think it's a whole like hashtag now, or a whole sub trope or whatever in different stories, which that's amazing, because before, there was so much conversation around these type of books. I don't think that people felt older characters were worth writing about, like, that they weren't kick-ass, that they weren't criminals, that they weren't sexy, that they weren't happy, they weren't, they just weren't interesting enough to put as a main character in a book. And so many books have like totally blown that out of the water. Okay, so this is the blurb. When 58-year-old Helen Spencer reviews her life, what she sees are the mistakes. And that's, I'll just stop right here and say, that is often true. Like when you get older, you either start thinking about mistakes you made or regrets. And that's why it's important to live your life in a way that, they're far and few in between. They were like, lessons. They were life lessons. They were, pebbles in the road to where you are, and you just have to keep looking forward. So anyway, over the years, things seem to go sideways incrementally, one little wrong decision at a time. She can even pinpoint where it all started to go away. A wondrous romantic night in the woods, her senior year of high school, with a boy named Cal Crosby. A night she would soon work hard to forget. So fast forward 40 years, one marriage, 3 children, and 1 grandbaby later, suddenly there he is, Cal Crosby, right in front of her with grandchildren of his own in tow. The chance to finally get some answers and sort out what happened is within reach. But Helen would much prefer to keep that night and all the fury, hurt, and sorrow that followed tightly locked away where she doesn't have to face it. Cal Crosby, however, is ready to talk. He has no idea of the can of worms he is about to open. In fact, he doesn't know the half of it. There's that word again. So, I think that, again, when you get to a certain age, and it doesn't even have to be in your 50s, it could be in your 40s or even in your 30s, there's always that one big thing that happened, whether it's a relationship that, you broke up on bad terms, and that could be like a romantic relationship, a friendship, something to do with a parent, right? Or a sibling, or like, a work situation. But I think if you live long enough, we all have that one big thing in our lives that maybe there wasn't a lot of resolution around it, and I guess a lot of people say closure, now, but there's just different schools of thought, I think, on closure, and whether or not, because sometimes you're not gonna get closure, even if you go back and have conversations with people. A lot of people won't take accountability for what they did, and or they'll try to gaslight you into thinking this or that, or maybe it was you had the wrong interpretation of what that relationship meant. Whatever the case, but I think that we can all agree that there may have been something in our lives that we'd like to revisit, or things that we wish we could have said, or you think about the way that a person talked to you or treated you, or something they said, and you didn't really get that out, and it maybe follows you into future situations, maybe because of how an ex, did you, or if they cheated on you. Now you have trust issues from that one relationship throughout your life now, and it could have been 20 years ago, but you still kind of move in a way where you don't really trust people, or you don't like to get close to people because of something that happened. And that is kind of what we're dealing with here in this particular story. So when it first opens, Helen is at the park with her grandchild. I think she has a granddaughter. And this little kid comes running up to her. He's lost or whatever. And she's like having to get her granddaughter and try to help this little boy find whoever, lost him or whatever. And this man comes around the corner with a baby strapped to him. And he's older. He's like her age. And that's the grandpa of the little boy. And she looks a little bit closer. She knows this man. He's much older, but there's no denying who the man is. And so then we get like some flashbacks of like when they were younger, like in high school, and how they met, what they meant to each other, and some pivotal moments from their budding friendship to a relationship. And they were very, 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 very young at the time. Obviously, they're in high school. But there was something that happened that, it really scarred Helen, in a way that she never really got over. And when you talk about the half of it, like being the title of the book, sometimes I think people live half lives, even though from the outside, it looks fulfilling to everyone else. but it could be that you just settled for something because you didn't think you could have anything else. And it all stemmed from something that happened in your past again, you know? So that's kind of what Helen was at this point. She's a widow. And he's separated from his wife. It's a very complicated relationship that you're going to have to read the book to figure out what that's about. But, you know, she realizes who he is immediately. And I don't think he recognizes her until like later, you know, because they end up letting the kids play and they sit on the bench watching them or whatever. And I can't remember like at what point he had the aha moment that it was her, because, you know, it's been 40 years. Like they were 18 at the time when they last saw each other, and they're 58 now. But he like realize that it's her, and he wants to apologize for the thing that happened. And she's like, dude, it's been 40 years. I'm over it. But she ain't over it. she been suppressing that for 40 whole years. And when it comes out of her, it comes out. But the thing that I really enjoyed about this, it brought the notion of coming full circle and getting closure to a whole nother level, right? Because once they were able to kind of talk that through and hash out what happened, because, you know, again, they both got married to other people. They both had kids. They had careers. They went on to seemingly thrive in their lifetimes. But that was, so you would think, oh, you know, they probably should just, you know, let that alone, or they got over it, or it doesn't matter or whatever. But hearing the versions of what happened and why it happened and all of that, it gave them both a measure of like relief, and this thing that they had been carrying, they were finally truly able to put it down. And they ended up not only rekindling their friendship, because they have so much in common now, because they're both grandparents in this little small town, and, you know, a bunch of other stuff. They start working together on a project, and they also rekindle, you know, like the romance that was budding back then. You know, they were just kids, but now they're adults with so many, you know, years of life experience and wisdom and things that, you know, they just have the tools now that make it possible for them to actually sustain and have an actual relationship. And so it's kind of cute watching them go through those motions and rebuild their friendship and the romantic side of it. Yeah, so it was just very good storytelling. And outside of, I don't know, that maybe there were some mentions about, oh, you know, a gray hair or something, or obviously the grandkids, you know, we heard about them. But just reading the story, it was really just two people. You know, she didn't belabor the fact that they were older, you know, that they were technically senior citizens. Like there was no focus on that. They just seemed like two people who desired companionship and friendship and love and romance and even sex, you know, that they were just, they were in older bodies, but in a lot of ways, mentally, they were still the same in a lot of ways. I also enjoyed, there was a friend that she had, that Helen had, like when they were in high school, that knew the whole story with her and Cal. And she had been in her life all the way through, you know, the time that she got married and had kids. They had like a falling out or a little misunderstanding, but the friend was still alive, and she still, you know, was there for her, and they kind of rekindled their friendship as well. So it was good to see that, you know, having people in your life who knew you then and now, and they can kind of see the evolution that you've gone through, and they've been there for all those pivotal moments, and they still, you know, love you and care for you and accept you exactly the way that you are. I think that is such a gift that a lot of us probably don't, you know, really understand how amazing that is, to have somebody that's been in your life for like 40 years. like a friend, or like a true friend or whatever, to have gone through all the paces and stages of life with. That is true. It's truly a blessing. It really is. Um, yeah, there were a couple of things that I was just like, like there was something like before her husband died, something that was going on with him. I didn't understand the thing that was happening with him and somebody else. That was weird to me. But I think it also spoke to a certain generation and how you're raised to pretty much see things through to the end. If you make a commitment to do something, no matter how you feel, you have a responsibility. You have to see things through. My generation, like I'm Generation X, and the boomers, for all the shit that we may get collectively, that was something that we were taught, like quitting because you just didn't feel like doing something, or because things just, you weren't happy, or things weren't going your way. Like that was just unheard of. You stuck things out, you made it work, you gave it your all, and you kept going, and so there was a lot of that in the relationships, even in the relationships that they were in, with other people. I was really mad at the author, but then I had to pull back because, again, I was so wrapped up in the story, and it so wasn't about age, that there was something that happened that I was like, I know you are fucking lying. And I will say this, I'm not going to give it away, but I will say this for people who have read One More Day by David Nichols. Just spoiled it for you people, because I was mad about that. And had somebody told me that about that book, I probably wouldn't have read it. And I don't know about this one either. I mean, I enjoyed every aspect of it until we got to that part, and I was like, are you for real? What is happening right now? But at the end of the day, I think that we all want to have a relationship, and not even necessarily romantic, not even necessarily, heterosexual, not even like, but just when I say relationship, I mean something with another person, right? Whatever that looks like, whatever your role is in that, right? I think that we all want a relationship where we feel some form of love, affection, connection, and to be seen and known by somebody, and pretty much accepted for who we are. And not if we're a trash person. I'm not talking about you like to kick puppies and the person loves you even though you're evil. No, not that kind of shit. I'm talking about if you're someone who, you're quiet, introvert, that maybe you get anxiety about being around people, that you don't have this person that comes into your life is like, no, you need to just come on, go out, and you'll get over it, and just be around people. And, like nobody's trying to change you. They accept you for who you are and kind of meet you where you are. And maybe you get out of it because you love them enough to try, but it's not being forced on you. And to just kind of have that in your lifetime, it is, again, that's also a blessing. And I don't know that a lot of people get that, but yeah, and to get that type of love, no matter when it shows up, at what age, it's still a blessing to have. And I think that, and I guess it's a Shakespeare quote, everything can be attributed, I think, to Shakespeare, but it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I think that is truly, a real thing. I mean, it's sad, if you love someone and you lose them to whatever, situation is, but you've known love like in your life. And I think it colors how you see the world and what you know is possible, and how you feel towards, other human beings, the empathy that you have, because the capacity that as human beings, what we can achieve, what we can feel, how we can be towards each other, when we're not being brainwashed. But yeah, I mean, I can wax poetic about love and romance, because I am a hopeless romantic. That is something that I just think will, you know, and it sounds cheesy, but I think a lot of people, the problems that they have, the way that they move through life is because they didn't get enough love. Yeah, no, nobody loved them the right way, because their main goal is to just cause chaos and confusion. Okay, so let me get back to the book, but I'm just really, I don't know if the word is glad, but to just make it, because that just seems so insignificant to say. But I am just really glad that as a reader, I have not pigeonholed myself. I know I talked about in the last review that it seems like I've been on a bender, on a tear with all the mystery suspense books, but I'm open to all types of books. You know, I haven't found a fantasy book yet. I mean, and I'm not talking about, I guess vampires and the stuff like that, you know, can be considered. And I have read several books like that. But like the books where people, like there are dragons and people turning into animals and stuff outside of Twilight. I haven't read a blurb, or even I've like started reading one. Like those haven't pulled me in yet. But every other genre, I am open to it. I have found amazing books in various genres. And this was no exception. Like I think this would be considered more women's fiction, perhaps. I mean, it is romance and like mature romance, but the storytelling of it and the characters and just the way that the author pulled the story together, it was just such a great reminder why I love reading so much, why I love stories so much. And that's something that, you know, this came up at the book thing that I did also a few weeks ago, is like the difference between an author and a writer. Writers tell stories. And yes, writers become authors, some of them. But there are people that want to be authors just to say that they are an author. They just want to be able to put that in their LinkedIn profile. But they're not storytellers. This was a story, a very, very well told story. And every now and then it's good, I think, to pick up something that is more literary than it is popular, you know, because I had never heard this story. I don't know if you guys have heard of this story. If you have heard of this story, I would love to know in the comments if you've read other stories by this author, because I am on a quest now. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole with her and see some of her other work. But this is the reason I got into reading. This is these type of stories. Actually, I'm entertained by the others, but when I read stories like this, it's like, yeah, that's storytelling. It brings you full circle. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry, get a little verklempt, because you know that was happening here. It makes you you know, think about your own life. There's parallels and connections that are made that stir something inside of you. Those type of stories are very rare in this microwave day and age where authors are putting out books every month. How the hell? But yeah, I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop here. If you love stories that feature mature characters, stories that have romance elements, stories about lives well lived, that give, you know, gems and drop wisdom about life. You know, I think that you will really enjoy The Half of It by Juliette Fay. Very, very good story. Really enjoyed this one. Again, if you have read this, let me know in the comments your thoughts on it, okay? And why don't you go ahead and do me a favor and subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Let's get that done out of the way. Tell a friend to subscribe to my channel, because you want to help me get to 2,000 subscribers before the end of this year. And I appreciate it so, so much. Thank you guys so much for watching. You know, always coming on, listening to me ramble, go off on tangents. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks again, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.